Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel. Today in this video, I am going to talk about the 2025 The American Cup. And our main character today is none other than Hikaru Nakamura, who is a main star in this tournament. He is participating in the 2025 American Cup. This tournament is gathered with a ton of strong players, and the tournament is extremely intense. On the first day, Hikaru is playing against Mishra, the youngest grandmaster in America. He had two great chances to win. Well, for Hikaru had two great chances to win in the middle game and end game, but unfortunately, he missed both of these chances. And it's such a pity that he missed both, but finding those winning opportunities in a complex game with only a little time left is extremely hard. But the next day's match is even more full of excitement. So actually, if you guys don't know that this tournament, first of all, there are two players are going to play two classical games, and each day they play one game. So in the first day, the game ended in a draw, and then the next day in game two, their game was just extremely, it's just even more exciting than the first game. They drew it as well, even though, again, Hikaru had a lot of winning opportunities, and then they went into the Blitz playoff. Mishra played really well and won the first game, and he only needs to draw the very next game in order to qualify into the winner's bracket semifinals. However, Hikaru, he didn't let the setback affect him. In the following games, he managed to turn things around. First of all, he drew the second game, and then he won. No. He won the second game, and then he drew the third, and then the final game, he won and then qualified into the winner's bracket, the semifinals. And today, I'm going to show you guys a couple of games that he had played. And in the following games, he managed to turn things around. Despite some mistakes being made by both players, actually, he used his excellent skills and strong mental, strength to secure a victory and advance to the next stage of the tournament. For these two matches, for the classical and then the Blitz playoffs, it's clear that Hikaru is really just a very outstanding player. His skills and mental toughness are top notch. He can stay calm in a tough situation even when he is behind a full point or even more, and fight back when given the chance. And as we can see, it's not an easy thing, no easy feat to be the top player in the United States. So what is the 2025 the American Cup? Well, the American Cup is one of the strongest tournaments in the United States, featuring a double elimination bracket and two time controls. The players here we have Fabiano Caruana, Wesley So, Leonardo Dominguez, Ray Robson, Hikaru Nakamura, Levon Aronian, Sam Sevian, and I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, but the one who is playing against Hikaru Mishra, who is the youngest grandmaster in America. Now we can see, the broadcast, the schedule, and the format. The American Cup consists of a double elimination bracket, with each bracket featuring a different time control. Double elimination bracket, classical time control, 90 minutes plus 30 seconds each move increment. And also there's the rapid time control, 15 minutes plus 10 seconds each move. Championship bracket matches two classical games, elimination bracket matches two rapid games. So you see that the winner's bracket and the elimination bracket, they have two different time controls. And now we have the grand final reset, two-game rapid match followed by playoffs if necessary. So actually the whole process is extremely complex, many different types of time controls, and it definitely is very challenging for the players, and that they need to adapt to all different kinds of time controls in a very short time. And this is the price for the American Cup, featuring a $250,000 prize fund. So actually, this is really a high prize. So the players, of course, are giving their bets to win the tournament. And the location is, of course, at the St. Louis Chess Club in St. Louis, United States. All right, so this is the basic introduction of this tournament, and now let's take a look at this article really fast. Hikaru Nakamura shuts down near upset from Mishra. After 4 more draws in the classical portion, all of the matches in the American Cup 2025 Open went to blitz playoffs, like Grandmasters Hikaru Nakamura, Fabiano Caruana, Leonor Dominguez, and Lavana Ronian have advanced to the champion semifinals or the winner's bracket semifinals. The following are their last lives in the elimination brackets. Grandmasters Sorry, I just find it a little bit difficult to pronounce the name, but Mishra, Wesley So, Sam Savian, and Ray Robson. All 3 leaders from day 1 in the, well, actually this is about the Women's American Cup, but today in this video we're basically focusing on the Open, like the men's. And now we can see that these are basically what is happening, and actually Hikaru versus Mishra was a close encounter, and the 16-year-old, Mishra is only 16-year-old, and that is just very impressive. They came ever so close to, he came ever so close to winning it. Hikaru, after winning, told international master Eric Rosen it was a pretty terrible match from the standpoint of quality. I have to give credit to Mishra. He defended well, I think, in both classical games, and then this tiebreaker was pretty insane. Indeed, the tiebreaker was insane, and these are the games, and here this is the format, the playoff format, that is. So if a match is tied, 2-game blitz match, which is 3 minutes plus 2-second each move increment, and colors determined by lot, and still tied, then 2-game blitz match, 3 plus 2, colors reversed from match 1, still tied, then we go to the Armageddon, 3 minutes for white, 2 minutes for black, 2-second increment from move 1, black wins if ends in a draw, but of course black is down a full minute, so still it's not that easy. And the playoffs start with an utter shock as Mishra, who had mostly defended until this point, won the very first game against Hikaru in this whole tournament. Hikaru actually explained that he overreacted in an equal position, like he somehow desperately wanted to win it and then overreacted and then lost at the very end. Mishra seemed to be offering a repetition on move 34, and indeed he is. Which Hikaru actually declined and eventually collapsed in the queen endgame when he fell into a fatal forced queen trade, because once he trades off the queens, then, he is down a pawn and he will be completely losing. But, even though Mishra won this first game in the Blitz playoff, still there are a couple of more games that is happening, and in the very end, Hikaru actually had a great comeback. Alright, now, finished with this article, now let's take a look at this first game, which is the classical game round 1 played between Hikaru and Mishra. So Hikaru is with the white pieces, and we have the queen's gambit declined, the Catalan actually, bishop g2, short castle, d takes c4, queen c2, so developing the queen, threatening to win the pawn back, but also at the same time supporting e4. Queen c2 is played, we have a6 here. Basically, this is all theory, very standard, a4, bishop d7. So kind of both sides are blitzing out these moves. Bishop f4, bishop d6. Well, actually, Mishra spent a few minutes on this move before playing it, but maybe already it is out of his comfort zone, or maybe he is deciding what to play here to get out of Hikaru's comfort zone or something. Bishop d6, and then we have knight c3, developing the knight. Bishop takes f4, and you might be wondering, okay, white suddenly just has this really ugly pawn structure, like a doubled pawn, and the king is just widely opened to the g-file. But actually, this is something that happens a lot, especially in the Catalan, where even though at first sight, white may seem like having this really bad pawn structure, but then you just realize that these pawns control all of these squares in the center, all of these important squares in the center. And actually, it's really difficult for black to launch an attack on the king side because basically all white needs to do is to get the king away and then the rook over to the g file. It's completely fine, and white can even just play something like e3 to defend the pawns. So actually this is a very common thing that happens especially in the Catalan. And here a5 was played in the game. We have e3 to defend the pawns, knight a6. So actually here Mishra decides to develop the knight this way, but actually the knight is better to go to d7 and then to b6 instead of going to a6, because after knight bd7, for example, here, let's just say white plays something like king h1. Now black can just play something, like knight b6 here, and let's say the queen goes back to d3, for example, now. And after bishop takes f3, the knight can jump to d5, blockade this diagonal, and actually this knight is really strong, solid on this d5 square. That is a better plan for black's knight, but instead in the game, Mishra decides to play knight a6 here, and Hikaru decides to go king h1, which is very logical, and actually here, Mishra decides to put his knight to b4, which is also a really nice outpost for the knight. Now Hikaru decides to go back with queen e2 here. Actually, all of these moves are really normal. We have knight b5, bishop takes f3, bishop takes f3. Both sides are having a pair of minor pieces off, well, actually 2 pairs of minor pieces off the board right now. And here, actually, the position is pretty equalized because the position is more close to going towards an endgame, quite simplified already. And no huge pawn breakthroughs or anything. We have c6 here, so black here is deciding to kick away this knight. And here, Hikaru decides to play knight a3, which is a very nice square for the knight, because if you jump back to c3 here, even though at first sight, it seems like your knight is on this square where it controls a couple of squares, supports e4, but actually it doesn't really do much on c3 here compared to a3, because after the knight jumps to a3, you suddenly just realize that not only does this knight, maybe at first sight it seems like it is really passive because it is on the side ranks files actually, but then you see that this knight has a couple of options, knight c4 first, and also knight c2 to offer a trade to trade off this very nice knight. Now in the game, Mishra decides to play knight e8, and the position is pretty much solid right now, positional position, and both sides are just maneuvering their pieces. Knight c2, takes, f5, fixing the pawn structure, queen b3. Well, the problem for f5 is that it might a little bit slightly weaken this e6 pawn, these dark squares as well might be a little bit exposed or something, but right now it is still fine. Mishra here decides to play knight f6. The knight can now jump to d5 at any time. And in the game, Hikaru decides to play rook ac1. Actually, by far, both players haven't made a single mistake yet. Besides some inaccuracies, there's no mistakes by both sides, and the position went on after, very normally. Queen g2, b6, the rook goes back here. But even though the engine says that this position is completely equalized, but I think in human eyes, when playing a position like this, white is definitely the side who is playing for more, because you see that the c6 pawn is a weakness here, and it cannot be pushed because the d5 knight will fall. But if it doesn't push, then white can now double the rooks on the c file to try to put some pressure on the c6 pawn. But of course, if black defends really well, it is still a draw. In the game, we have rook ac8, so all black needs to do is just to keep an eye on the pawns and everything, and it should be completely fine. Now, in the game, Hikaru decides to play rook gc1 to double the rooks, and after queen e7, h3 was played. So the idea is actually to, get up with the king, and always this is kind of like a necessary option. h3 was played in the game, and then after knight b4, both sides are just jumping back and forth for a couple of times here. And the position went on like this for a couple of more moves here. And we have bishop c4, and both sides are just going back and forth here. The king goes up, but still no huge progress has been, no progress has been made so far. and back and forth. But still, after a couple of more moves, Hikaru decides that he wants to play for more, and he decides to push his pawns on the king side, and this is definitely the only way for him to create some possibilities. In the game, knight f6 was played, so Mishra is still going back and forth with his knight because that's all he needs to do. And queen h4 was played in the game, and then a couple of more normal moves. Well, finally we have the queens off the board now, which actually might be a good thing for white because now that the queens are off the board, there is one less strong defending piece in black's territory. I mean, of course, there's also one strong attacking piece out of white's territory, but at least this is a better symbol that white might have more chances because without the queens on the board, like h6 and something, white at least don't need to worry about black's queen sliding into the position or something. And then here after bishop takes d5, Hikaru decides to trade off the minor pieces as well here. And in the game, c takes d5 was played here, although actually e takes d5, in my opinion, just simply draws on the spot because even though the c6 pawn is still a problem here, but now, the king can just simply come out here and there's nothing white can do. And even sometimes after the king is on this e6 square, c5 might even be possible for black. But of course, in the game, taking with the c pawn is also completely fine here, and Hikaru decides to ignore this exchange because definitely you don't want to exchange the rooks because after takes, you're just giving black this open file, and probably it's now black's turn who is going to play for a win. So in the game, Hikaru ignores the trade and plays rook b1, and in the game, king g8, b4 was played, and basically this is white's only chance to create counterplay. Rook c4, and actually this is the first mistake that is being played by Mishra, and actually this is a very bad move. And Hikaru here decides to play b takes a5, b takes a5. He found the best reply to rook c4 here, but didn't come up with the best follow-up plan. Now also just to show you guys that here, instead of playing rook c4, for black just needs to take on b4 and after rook takes b4, simply to defend the pawn. Because now if you just go rook b1, then it can actually ignore everything. Takes, even though white is simply up a pawn right now, but it's a draw because, white has a double pawn that counts as one pawn here at this point. You just go rook a8, and it is quite impossible for white to ever push this pawn further up the board. The king probably needs to come over to this side, but at that time, black will be able to get some counterplay on the king side. So actually giving up a pawn, but it will be a much easier draw for black. But instead, in the game, Mishra decides to play rook c4 and allowing Hikaru to find counterplay. Although here Hikaru actually played a really bad move, he should have played this rook b6 move to attack the pawn, and after king s7, then go for rook a1. At least he has already activated one of his rook, and now he is going to go after this a5 pawn. This rook defends the a4 pawn. This position, if he had played even every move accurately, he is going to win this game. But however, due to some time troubles and everything, he only has 5 minutes left on the clock, even though Mishra only has 2 minutes left. But sometimes you should know that when you are the attacking side, sometimes it is even harder for you to find a correct plan when you're under time pressure. Because when you're the defending side, the worst side, all you need to do is just to go back and forth and play those reasonable defending moves, which are actually very easy to see. Even when you're under time pressure, you can still find these very straightforward defending moves, but for the side who is better, sometimes it is a really big challenge. And in the game here, Hikaru decides to play king f3. His idea is definitely to go h6 to open up the rook's file and trying to create more pressure on the g7 pawn. But what he didn't realize is that black here can play this really the only way move here to prevent everything, which is rook b4. And don't even think about taking on a4 because you'll just simply fall for white's trick here, because now white can simply go rook b6 to attack this e6 pawn. And now obviously you have to defend with the rook, and after rook e8, then you can go h6, g6, and then rook b7. Now, let's say if the rook goes down, but then after rook g7, let's say king h8, well, now rook b1 comes in and rook b7 is unstoppable. Mate is coming and white is completely winning. But in the game, however, he played king f3 instead of, like, king f3, and instead of playing some rook a4 ideas, Mishra found the best defending move, which is rook b4, and suddenly this rook will never be activated, and now Hikaru is kind of forced to trade the rooks off, but then this is simply just a draw game. h6 was played in the game. However, Mishra here made another mistake by playing g6, which looks very reasonable, but instead he could have just made a very easy draw by sacrificing a pawn once again and play this king f8 move. Now, of course, if you take with the pawn, then king g8 will just simply be played, and then this pawn will never be pushed further up the board. And if you take with the rook here, even though at first sight this really does seem like white is winning, but then black has this really nice only move, which is to go rook b8, and after rook h7, there's king g8, and if you go, and if you go rook g7 here to check again, king h8, and this pawn is now threatening to push down the board. White's only option is to go back to prevent it, but then the king can just simply go up to go for this pawn. But in the game, however, this is just an idea that is not that easy to see when you're under time pressure here, and instead, Mishra just goes for the more reasonable idea, g6 here, but it does give Hikaru some chances. Rook b1, and then rook b8, king e2, b3, king d3, but Mishra again made a mistake by playing this rook a8 move. And actually here, what he should have played is to go rook b4 instead to tickle this pawn, and after a5, just simply follow this pawn, and after it goes to a7, then go rook a6, because now after takes, you at least get to defend this 7th rank. But in the game, however, with only 36 seconds left on the clock for Mishra, he instead decides to play rook a8, which is also very reasonable, but now after rook takes b3, rook takes a4, actually, Hikaru is already winning here, but he played this rook b7 move. Actually, he is already winning after rook b8, king f7 forced, and then simply rook h8 winning this h7 pawn. But actually, Hikaru might be worrying about some king f6 takes ideas, and then, I don't know, like rook a3, the king goes back, maybe like g5 or something? Like g5 takes, rook e7. Maybe he is not sure whether this is a winning position or not. Or there are also many other kinds of variations where he can just play back and forth or something. It's really complex, and maybe he thought that he is not completely winning and instead goes for this rook b7 move. But now this simply misses the chance, and Mishra found the best move, rook a2 here. And yes, then rook e7, king g8, rook takes e6. The position went on to be a very drawish game, but here Mishra gave him a chance once again. He played rook a2. Another winning chance for Hikaru. But Hikaru, I don't know what's happening, but maybe he is a little bit nervous or something, and he is under time pressure. And actually, all he needs to do is just to push this d5 pawn up the board, and that's all he needs to do, because after king f6, rook e6, king f7, the king just simply needs to go up, and then if you check here, then you just simply ignore it, and then go king takes f5, he just wins. But sometimes, even if these kinds of ideas are really easy to see, it's sometimes you just think too much, and then you kind of miss these opportunities, very easy winning ideas. In the game, Hikaru unfortunately missed it and played e4 immediately, and yeah, the game just ended in a draw after, this is just a draw, because here after e4, after his e4, rook takes e4, if the rook, here it is a draw if the rook is on e5 or e4, all of the other squares it is winning, but now you see the rook is on e4 here, and this is one of the main the drawing positions that actually appears in endgame books and everything. The rook is just simply not where it should be, and then after rook e8, but then black simply plays this rook a4 move to cut off the file, and then the position immediately ended in a draw because the king is never able to get up, and then both sides quickly agreed to a threefold repetition. And with that, the first classical game ended in a draw for both of the players. The second classical game also is ended in a draw here. But Hikaru, he missed a lot of like winning opportunities. And at the very end, they went into the Blitz playoff, which is even more exciting. And let's take a look at this game where actually Hikaru, he lost the first Blitz game. He won the second game. And this is the game that we're going to be taking a look at today. Oh, well, not today, sorry, but right now. And Hikaru is playing with the white pieces once again, knight f3, knight f6. And again, we have this, well, of course, this is not the Catalan, but this is called the King's Indian attack, the Yugoslav variation. c5, and then here, actually after this c4 move, white somehow transfers back to the Neo-Catalan defense. And then after d4, basically this is all theory. After b6, d3, bishop b7, and everything. And rook b1, rook e8, bishop c1, e5, b4, and actually this is all pretty much theory. White is probably slightly better here because Hikaru does have more control of the space. Like on the queen side, these two pawns are extremely powerful, controlling a lot of squares. And also white gains full control of this e4 square, which made it really hard for black to push in the center. And in the game here, Hikaru decides to go b5. The position is actually just extremely normal here. Like both sides traded off into an endgame where it's actually just pretty much draw. Of course, both sides in the middle games they made, and in the opening they made a couple of inaccuracies, but at this point this is definitely a draw. And both sides actually just played really normally. Actually already here on move 34, Mishra just starts to make, like to repeat moves, as you can see. Like I'm gonna go back h4, queen e7, and then again queen e7. But here Hikaru refuses to make a draw repetition, and instead he decides to go rook d1. But sometimes you should know that when you're playing positions like it is just a draw, there are no winning opportunities for you. And just like in this position, this is just a position that is pretty much drawish. And I mean, black is the side who has more chances here. And actually, like sometimes even if you're stronger than your opponent, but you're playing in a position where it is simply just a draw, you should not, you should not try to win, like even when it's not winning. Sometimes you just need to accept that it is a draw. And here, this is just basically what happened. Hikaru is, well, actually here he kind of, with only a few seconds left on the clock, he blundered a pawn after queen c7. He played queen d3. He blundered his h4 pawn, but still this is a draw. But I think that after you blundered a pawn in a very drawish position, you're feeling like your emotions will just feel full of ups and downs. And I think at this point Hikaru is already feeling really bad about himself. And then he played on, and after h4 here, Hikaru made another mistake by playing king h3 here. And actually, if Mishra has played this queen d7 move, threatening some discovered attacks, the king has to go back. But then after, let's say, takes queen d6 or something, black is going to put a ton of pressure on this g3 pawn and probably win this game. But however, in the game, with only a couple of seconds left on the clock, both sides are just blitzing out their moves. g4 was played in the game, but this is like the losing move here. Hikaru should have just taken on d4, even then after takes here, well, he cannot take back because simply there's queen f3 losing for white. But here, if you're with the white pieces, you need to see this rook e4 move, threatening rook h4, and actually this is going to be a draw. After rook h4, takes, and then here you can play queen takes f2, even though you're down a pawn, but black's king is too exposed in the position, and white can end up with an unlimited amount of checks to draw. So here in the game, Hikaru, however, decides to go g4 here, and And then Mishra here, he decides to go f5, very logical. And here, after g4, queen s7 was played in the game. But this is blitz chess. Both sides are under time pressure, so making mistakes is pretty much reasonable. Who can blame them? And then here we have queen e4 on the board. Rook c5 was played. So black is actually going for the c4 pawn right now. And here, a terrible mistake, blunder by Hikaru. He played queen takes d4. I mean, definitely he just thought that maybe after rook c4, which did happen in the game, there's rook e7. But actually, what he did miss, what both sides missed, was that black here actually just wins immediately on the spot with queen f3. And again, this is just something that is so basic. And after king h1, queen takes e1 with check just simply wins. This is something that is so basic, but when you're under time pressure, even grandmasters miss these kinds of basic winning like material like ideas. And in the game, Mishra just decides to go for this, like more, what's the word? He decides to go for the more straightforward thing. And here he decides to play rook c4. Rook c4, and he missed rook e7 basically, because now if you take on d4, there's rook f7 here. And after rook f7 check, king h6 or something, this is a draw. But here, what white can do is that after, takes, this is a draw. But after king h4, still, there are a lot of, what's the word? Challenges that white might face here. But I think at least at this point for black, it is better to keep the queens off the board, because with the queens on the board, you have more winning chances. So that is why in the game, Mishra decides to play queen e7, and after queen c4 here, g5. So you see that Mishra is now up a pawn, but unfortunately, this is a draw because, again, the king is really exposed. But sometimes you just, these kinds of checking moves are really tricky sometimes. You just check your opponent, the check is unlimited, but then suddenly you just realize that your opponent's king is getting to safety, and you suddenly just run out of checks. And then here, Hikaru just run out of checks, and then after king g2, queen c2 was played here, and it is still a draw if Hikaru has played this king h3 move, but instead in the game he decides to go king g1, a terrible mistake, simply allowing queen c5, forcing a queen trade, and of course this is losing. So actually Hikaru, he lost this game, but but still, right now there are more games that are coming up, and he is now, actually this is round 3, and Hikaru lost it, but he actually won in the second game. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, Mishra won the first game, Hikaru won the second one, Mishra won the third, and then the fourth ended in a draw, and then the very last one, wait a second, let me think about this. Wait, let me quickly check the result. Well, actually, the games here. Well, actually, draw, Mishra won, and then Hikaru won, then it ended in a draw, and then here, Mishra, okay. So, this is, a win for Mishra, and now let's take a look at the final game, where actually before this game, both sides are 2.5 points, so the final game is extremely important for both sides. But again, this is blitz chess. So Hikaru is again with the white pieces, and they are going for this exact same line that they had actually played, although there are some changes. And again, both sides just played extremely normal in the openings, and now into the middle game, they traded off allied square bishops. But as you can see, this is completely theory, and now Hikaru, he is trying to create more space on the queen side and put some pressure on the b6 pawn here. In the game, well, again, this is pretty much normal, and after knight d6, knight f3, finally both sides, they have maneuvered their pieces, and now Hikaru is actually threatening to go for this really deadly idea with knight e5 to fork the queen and the rook here. And of course, in the game, Mishra, he knows that Hikaru is going for knight e5, and he played f6. f6, e4 was played, knight f7, h4 was played. Hikaru is going really aggressive at this point, and here Mishra actually made a mistake, a fatal mistake in the game. What he should have played is that is actually he can take on g5, and after h takes g5, he can go for this e5 move to break open in the center, because like to damage white's pawn structure, white here can, the best option is to go f5, and after bishop takes, knight takes, black takes, even though black is up a pawn here, but white can go for knight d5 and win the e5 pawn back. So in the game, that is the best way for black to play, and at that position, that is going to be a pretty much equalized one. But here Mishra played rook d6. And the reason that this is a mistake is because now Hikaru can simply take on f6, and the main problem is that you can no longer take on f6 with the bishop to keep your king safe behind these pawns, because now there's just simply e5 to fork the rook and the bishop and winning the material as well as game. So here black can only take with a g-pawn, but this just means that it opens up the g-file and exposes black's own king. For white, white's king is also exposed on this file, but white can just simply move away with king h2. And don't forget that white is the side who has a bigger space on the king side. And basically, white can get the pieces to the king side really fast, but for black, black is finding a really hard time to get the pieces towards the king side. And in the game here, Mishra decides to go for king f8. King h8 is not good because it just simply runs into the diagonal of the white's light square bishop. Oops, sorry. White can now simply go e5 if king h8 was played, and basically this is game over for black. Black even needs to play some moves like rook d4 maybe to blockade the diagonal, but of course if this happens, then this is definitely winning for white. So that is why in the game king f8 was played instead, but still there's e5. And actually at this point, Mishra only has 23 seconds left on the clock. And this final game, I think he somehow lost control of his time usage. And already at the very beginning, he is down 2 minutes versus Hikaru. And already now at this very crucial moment, he is down too much time with like so little time to think. He played rook d7 first. Well, Hikaru decides to go d4, which is actually a mistake. But what Hikaru should have played immediately to win is to go knight e4 here, even though black can play f5. But now that there's knight f6, and then bishop takes f6, e takes f6, this e6 pawn is under huge trouble here. But if black doesn't take, play something like knight h6 to go to g4. Then after knight d7, black is sacrificing like half a piece to activate the knight, but now there's d4, knight g4, you can simply ignore it and play king g3 here. I think white is definitely winning at this point. But in the game, however, Hikaru decides to play d4, which is the wrong move order, and the best option here for black is actually to take on d4, simply to take, and then after knight takes d4, guess what black can play here? Black's best option here is actually to sacrifice his rook for the knight and play rook takes d4, because after takes, you take, at first sight, this just seems like insane. Full insane. But then after f5, you just suddenly realize that knight h6, knight g4 is coming. These two knights will be really annoying for white. And for the rook, it's not that easy to get into the position, and even if white is up material, this a1 bishop isn't really doing much. Like, it is behind its own pawn chains, and I think black is kind of holding the position together. But with only a few seconds left on the clock, this is way too hard for black to see, and in the game, Mishra instead decides to go f5, which is a blunder, because now simply this allows Hikaru to play d5, and then after queen goes back, d6 to trap the bishop, and basically this is game over. Hikaru just simply won this game smoothly after the knight jumps to g4, but the king goes back, and then Hikaru is just simply up a full piece. Now all he needs to do is to activate the pieces, and here he played knight d5. Because now if you take, as played in the game, white can just simply win this knight back, and if you take on c4, queen takes d7 was played, although here what white should have played is actually to take on the c4 pawn, and don't worry about back rank checks, because you just play king g2, and black is running out of checks. So here in the game, however, after queen d7, here, the position somehow is still unclear, but here, Hikaru made another mistake, and the position suddenly turns into a draw. here what Hikaru should have played is actually just to get up with the king towards the queen side to stop the pawns from pushing. Bishop a3 was played, however, now giving Mishra the chance to hold a draw here. He can simply make an easy draw by playing king c6 here and prepare for b6 takes and push the pawns further. And white needs to push the pawn, and it is just a matter of speed. After e7, you go knight f6 and then bishop b2. White will be trying to create some challenges for black, but then here you have to play really accurate with the white pieces because these pawns are no jokes. They are pushing down the board really fast, and if white is not doing really well, then even white might be losing the game. But however, in the actual game, Mishra, with only 8 seconds left on the clock, he played a mistake, the fatal mistake, and played knight e3. Missing the opportunity, simply he didn't saw what Hikaru is looking for, and Hikaru now played a5 and achieved his idea. And after knight c2 here, but simply Hikaru just took on b6, and Mishra is not in time to stop these two pawns. e6, king d6, and then b7, and here Mishra resigned the game, and Hikaru won this final game and then qualified into the winner's bracket, the semifinals. Well, Mishra dropped into the loser's bracket, but still he is playing in this tournament. But 3 games and all kinds of results happened. In the first classical game, it was a draw, and in the first blitz game that we saw, Mishra won, and in the very last one, Hikaru won this game, which is the most important game after all. And yeah. But again, it's no easy feat to be the top player in the United States, even when you're so close, but sometimes they just have more experience and they're just stronger. Well, yeah. So I hope you guys enjoyed these 3 games as well as this video, and please subscribe. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!